the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Oh, amen, amen, amen.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning, Table Tribe. It is great to see you today. It's good to be back for sure. I know it's a little bit weird, and I know you guys feel so far away, but see, they know that I spit when I speak, and so they wanted to protect you from me this morning. So thanks for bearing with us. Just a couple things before we begin our new series this morning. The first is, many of you know that our schools are actually going back to school. Kids are going back to school, and so some of you are celebrating. And we actually want to sponsor 100 backpacks in order to give away on the first. We're going to be giving those backpacks away, but we need people to sponsor those. I don't even think we're close to halfway there, but here is where you can go. I think we've got a picture of our backpack sponsor stuff. Maybe, maybe not. Guess not. Anyway, love for you to go online. You can purchase a backpack with all the supplies in it for $25, and you just go to our website, thetablejoliet.org, and you can actually just find the backpack there where you give. On the giving section, you can just find the backpack and go ahead and help support our students going back to school. We'll be giving to those kids in need. Speaking of giving, thank you. I cannot thank you enough for those of you who have contributed to the table during this season. Honestly, we would not be here if it wasn't for you. We would not actually be able to continue our services online and do what we do every week if it wasn't for your generosity. And so again, if you want to give, you can go online, thetablejoliet.org, give, and you'll find it there. Or you can, if you want to, on the way out, you can just put stuff in the boxes on the way back. Speaking of on the way out, I know it's a lot today. This is all new for us. But instead of having a barrage at the back doors, you will not actually exit these doors. Before we leave today, we'll dismiss you by tables, and we'll exit this west door right behind over here out into the kids section, and it'll just direct you right out into the parking lot where apparently it is pouring down rain. So thank you for those of you who have braved the rain today. We are excited, and I've been excited to just watch you share our messages online to other people. We have a good number of people who have said, I'll never come to the table in person, but I'm definitely watching online, which I'm okay with. As long as they're hearing good news, as long as they're getting the gospel, but it's because you decided to share that with them that people now are participating in the church and the life of the table. So I want to thank you for being part of our mission of guiding people forward in their faith. And I just want to say it's been fun to watch you grow during this season. We had so much feedback about our neighboring series online. Many of you took up the challenge that we gave you, and you actually took a step of faith, and you crossed the street, and you said hi to your neighbors. And you actually begin to know your neighbor's name. Some of you actually scheduled a party, although it couldn't happen. You scheduled parties, which is amazing. You were growing in your faith, which is something that we value here, is that you would grow spiritually. So thank you for that. Today we begin a new series called Things Jesus Never Said. And nobody has been more misquoted, and no book has ever been misquoted more than the Bible and Jesus. And unfortunately, what happens in the faith world is that we take the words of Jesus and we take the words of the Bible and we make them fit our political opinions. Not that any of you would put that kind of stuff on social media. I know it's nothing divisive going on today. But we take the words of Jesus and we make them fit our political opinions, the points we want to make, and our ideologies. And it's scary because we actually don't know what Jesus says. We just think we know what he says. People have come up to me all the time and they say, you know, it says in the Bible, and honestly, there are people out here who are way better scholars than about the Bible, so I genuinely want to know, where would I find that? And so I'm curious. I'll look it up, and it's actually nowhere ever to be found, or it's just misconstrued, and it's all a big mistake. And so I want to take the next 4 weeks to talk about 4 main ideas that I actually think fit exactly where we are at this moment in time. So if you come back next week, next week's message is called, I'm on your side. We know that God's on your side and my side. So why would he be on their side? And so we're going to be talking about everything from racism and violence in America to, you name it, we're going to talk about it next week. And that's what we're going to be talking about. God's on which side? And the following week after that, we're going to be talking about heaven is why I'm here. Is heaven real, and am I going to heaven? That should be a fun conversation. And then in the final week, we're going to be talking about this. It's called You Get What You Deserve. And I know this is kind of sad, but the table has had a connection with a number of people who have lost family members to suicide over the COVID season. And that's kind of a sad, it's a very sad thing. But I've never in my life ever heard anybody, any pastor or anybody give a message about suicide. Ever heard somebody give a message on this? Anyone? Nobody's ever talked about suicide, and I think it's something that we need to talk about because people are asking the question, what happened to my loved one? Where's my friend? Are they with God? And I think it's going to be a healthy discussion for all of us. So today is going to be a great one, and we're going to start out with this because I think you have experienced, and I have experienced something over the last 3, 4, I think we're going on 5 months now, which is funny because we were only open for 5 months, and we've been absent for 5 months. But all of us have experienced some kind of doubt. And I'm just going to say it. If you can't be honest about the fact that you've had doubt over the last 5 months, you are in denial. I would be in denial. And a lot of times, I think we stay in denial because we're afraid to express our doubts. And so today, I've entitled this message, Doubting is Dangerous. That's right, doubting is dangerous. And before we begin our time, I want to do what we always do, and I want to have a discussion. You can talk during the talk. We'd love to do this. You can text somebody, you can take notes, you can talk with family members around the table. But what has been your biggest doubt over the last 5 months? During this time of COVID, what has been your biggest doubt? Maybe it's about whether you would have a job the next day. Maybe it's about where you're going to get your next, I don't know. What was your biggest doubt? Talk about it, and then we're going to dive into this morning's message. What's that? All right, friends, let's begin this. Hey, can you pray for me before we begin? I gotta be honest, I'm a bit nervous. I haven't done this has it really been 5 months? I've not done this in 5 months. The great thing about filming is I can do as many do-overs as I want, and now I don't get do-overs. So you'll have to forgive me if I say something I shouldn't. But let's pray. God, we thank you for this opportunity to come into your presence and to acknowledge that you are God in our lives. I pray that you would be in this time of teaching. I pray that you would give me the words. Oftentimes, words can't suffice to express who you are to us. May we honor you in this moment. In Jesus' name, amen. So I started out as a youth pastor in a little small town in Indiana. And it was great because when I was meeting our students, I met this young lady named Sarah, who was, by the way, just way mature for her age. She was thinking about life and God and things that no other teenager was thinking about. And when we met her, other than saying hi to us, she introduced herself by saying, "Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm an atheist." So I'm thinking to myself, well, why are you here? And I think looking back, I think she was an agnostic, meaning, hey, maybe there is a God. There's just no way of knowing that there is a God. I think that's where she was in that time. But she just said, "Hey, I'm Sarah the atheist." And it was great because we started having a discussion as a youth group about creation, why the world was created, creation theology. We were having this huge discussion. And I remember her engaging in this conversation. In fact, a lot of it happened with just Janelle and me, and we were always there talking with her, and she began to express doubts and questions about some of the things that we believe as Christians and things that we find in the Bible. And I thought, these are really good questions. And so I got this wild idea. I don't know if it was a good idea. I just thought it would be fun, and I wanted to experiment. And so we had students over at our house every Sunday night for a small group where we would let a student lead it. And I said, why don't you just lead this creation conversation over the next few weeks? And all I want you to do is just ask questions. And so I had no clue how this was going to go. But the kids show up, and we're talking about creation and what the Bible says, and she starts throwing out questions. She starts throwing out doubts, and you should have seen the looks on people's faces. Some people were angry. Some people were upset. You could see it was like they were burning holes in the side of her face, like, I can't believe you would say something like this. But slowly, the discussion, it was like engaging, and people were into it, and people were having, it was a great dialogue. It was back and forth and back and forth. And here's the thing, here's what I found. What she was expressing and what she was saying is what everyone else was afraid to say. And I found that a lot of times she would stay after and she would talk to us, and we'd talk about life, we'd talk about people she was dating, we would talk about God, but it always had this undertone of, don't look down on me because I have doubts. Don't think less of me because I'm not where you are in your faith. And there was this notion constantly of, I can't follow Jesus and I can't have faith because I have doubts. Are you with me on this? Do you experience this at all? I mean, maybe it was just me during this season, but it sure feels like I've had a lot of doubts over the last few months. And it kind of makes you feel like, because I have doubts, am I really a follower of Jesus? Can I just be honest with you for a minute? Is that okay? Some people will tell me it's not okay because they get scared when I start being honest about what's really going on in my brain. But when this whole thing started, we're just trying to figure everything out. And then quickly I realized this doubt or this question came up. It was like, okay, are you really a follower of God, or are you only here because you get a platform that people give you every Sunday? Are you really a follower and interested in the things that Jesus is doing in the world, or are you only doing it because you have the opportunity to help lead and guide a new church? Began to ask questions then all the questions started creeping in, well, do you really believe in God? Do you believe that the resurrection is true? Do you believe anything that you've been teaching people for the last 10 years? You ever had those questions? I mean, it really is a scary moment when all of a sudden you are faced with the fact that you're not as certain about your faith as you thought you were to begin with. And you know what's crazy? I get this from people all the time. They say, Brad, listen, we'd love for you to be honest, but we don't want you to be that honest. And what they're saying is, we really like you from a distance. We like this, but if you were up close and personal and you got to know me, you wouldn't want me as your pastor. And by the way, that's how most pastors are. But my question is, why are we so afraid of being honest about where we are? Here's the thing that I think we struggle with constantly is that we perceive that doubting is dangerous. And not only that, but we perceive people who doubt as dangerous. When I think about this small group, the biggest concern I got from people was, why would you let an atheist lead a group? What's she going to do? What's she going to say? They were afraid of some of the questions that could have been asked, even though every student was thinking about it in their mind. And my question to you is, why are we so afraid to express our doubts? So this morning I want to look at a conversation that took place between Jesus and a few people, and it actually doesn't involve Jesus at the beginning, but he shows up later on, and I find it interesting how the conversation turns out, and you've probably heard this story before. If not, Jesus has died on the cross, he's resurrected from the dead, he's appearing to people, he appeared to a bunch of women at the beginning, and now the disciples are on board, and here's what takes place. It says, now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples because he was out doing his thing. And so the other disciples told him, he says, we have seen the Lord. But Thomas said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put the finger where the nails were and put my hand in his side, I will not believe. Now, I love this. Anybody know what this is? Does anybody know what this is? It's not a time machine. It won't take you back to the past or into the future, although it looks like something that could do that. But this was given to me by my amazing sister-in-law, Joy. And we were visiting with them, and next thing I know, when I got home, I had an Instant Pot sitting on my front porch. And I love these things. If you've got one, I can cook sweet potatoes in less than 18 minutes, which, by the way, usually takes about 45 minutes. On a fall morning, I can put a whole thing of oatmeal in here, put a little cinnamon, some apples. Oh, my goodness. You talk about dessert for breakfast, this thing will do it. And what's amazing about the Instant Pot is that it essentially seals and it sucks the moisture out from the vegetables and the things that you put in and the water that you put in, and then it pressurizes it in such a way that then infuses the food once again with its very own moisture cooking it. Pretty cool, huh? But here's something that we often don't think about. You cannot unlock, this has a locking mechanism. That if you just went over after the time was up and you tried to turn it, there's no way you could open it. See, they were smart. They put this thing. Does anybody know what? Can you see it? Anybody know what this is? It is a pressure release valve. See, if I went over and tried to open this thing would literally blow my head off. I know some people would be really excited about that. But thankfully, you can't open the lid until you hit the pressure release valve. And I want to create, I say all that to say, I want to create a community of people that can come together every single week, because expressing your concerns, expressing your questions, by the way, is your release valve. It is the thing that will save you in the long run. Do you know why people's faith blows up in their face? It's because they like to keep the lid on. They actually don't want to talk about things that they're thinking about. They want to kind of keep it down. They want to keep it suppressed. They want to keep all this pressure, and then all of a sudden it blows up in their face, and then they walk away. They walk away from God. They walk away from church. They walk away from believing anything that has to do with religion. It's like, I don't want a part of that. But I want the table to be this place where we can release the pressure. We can be truthful about what we're going through and what we're experiencing in this moment. And you know what's funny? We're afraid to do that. And here's why. Check this out. In the story, Thomas, ever noticed this? That Thomas is the only one that gets labeled a doubter? In the story, the disciples are sitting there saying, come on, man, you're not where we are. You should be here. This is amazing. God is alive. It's great. You should be joining us. This is, what is your problem? Why are you still doubting? And they look like they have it all together. You know what's funny? It wasn't but a few days earlier that we find in Luke when the women go to the tomb and they come back and they tell the 11, they say, hey, we found Jesus. He's alive. And you know what they say? Here's what the disciples said. But they did not believe the women, because their words seemed like nonsense. Now explain this one to me. How is it that Thomas gets labeled as the doubter while the disciples get an escape? We never talk about the disciples, the doubter. We only talk about Thomas, the doubter. And I think what Thomas does for us in this moment, and for the disciples, and for the rest of humanity as we begin to think about God and we experience some of the things that we're going through now, Thomas hits the release valve. And he opens up a pathway for people to experience a healthier and fresher faith. So this morning, as we get ready to end our time, I want to ask you this question. I don't want you to talk about this one. We're actually going to do the opposite of what we're telling you to do today. I want you to think about this for just a minute. During the last 4 or 5 months, what has been your biggest doubt? Your biggest question about God? What's crazy is I often hear people who are in the church say, Jesus says, stop doubting and believing, which, by the way, is true. But we completely ignore everything that he said before that. Check this out. This is how the conversation ends up. It goes like this. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Finally, he came to. Through the door, though the doors were locked, Jesus came and he stood among them and he said, peace be with you. Then he said to Thomas, put your finger right here. See my hands? Reach out and put your hands into my side. It's only then that he says, now stop doubting and believe. Thomas says, my Lord, my God. And then Jesus says, because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are those who have not seen me, and yet they will believe. Have you ever known what the right decision is, but you were afraid to take the next step toward that right decision? Are you with me on this? Maybe you were confused about which college to go to. Maybe you were confused about who you should date. Maybe you were confused about which job you should take because you had 2 job offers. One offered more, but you knew that it would be a terrible work environment. One offered less, and you knew that, hey, this could be great opportunity. Maybe you watched somebody do something that you knew you should have confronted them about, but you just couldn't do it. Maybe you had to make a decision about somebody's life that you weren't ready to make a decision about. You knew what the right thing to do was, but you weren't ready to do it yet. And you know what you do? You go and you find a friend. You go and you find somebody who can guide you in that moment, who can give you advice, who can give you help, who can stand, even though you know the right thing to do, can stand there, help you, guide you, and persuade you to do the right thing. I say all that to say, check this out. When Jesus uses the word doubt, when we see doubt in this story, I love this. The idea behind the word means this: only unpersuaded, not unconverted. Are you with me? So often when we have doubts, we think that if we have doubts, we are now unconverted, that we are no longer a follower of Jesus. All it means is that you are unpersuaded. I want you to know that Jesus doesn't look down on Thomas in this moment. He doesn't think less of him in this moment. What he does is he does exactly what your friend does in the moment. Thomas knows the right direction. He knows where he's supposed to go. He knows what he's supposed to do. He just needs a little help getting there. And notice that Jesus doesn't get in his face and tell him everything wrong with what he's doing. He doesn't rebuke Thomas. He repeats his doubt. And he says, hey, your doubts are this. Check this out. He doesn't rebuke him. he repeats his doubt. And I want you to know that Jesus stands in the middle of all of your questions and all of your doubts. And it's not that you're no longer a follower. It's just that you may be a little bit unpersuaded. And Jesus is the guy that will help you in this moment. And I want you to know, he stands there and says, I know you have questions about the future. I know that you have doubts about whether the Bible is true, how the world was created. I know that you have doubts that if I can hear you or if I'm paying attention to anything that's going on in the world. I know the doubts that you have. And Jesus stands in every single one of those first. And he meets you there. And he empowers you there. And it's only then does he tell Thomas, and he tells us, it's time to move on. It's time to move forward with your life, but only when he's met you in the doubts. So here's what I want you to know today. Here's the big thing I want you to know. At the table, we don't believe that doubting is dangerous. We do not believe that people who come here and are afraid to express what's going on in their life is the way that we want to do things. And so I want you to hear this morning, that doubt ultimately leads us to a healthier discovery of God. You ever heard that before? We're giving you permission during this time to have questions. Doubt will ultimately lead you to a healthier discovery of God. One of my good friends says this. It says, and when people fight their way through the doubts and the conviction that Jesus is Lord, he says, they have attained a certainty that those, check this out, who unthinkingly accept things can never reach. Simply put, I say this all the time, whoever asks the most questions makes the greatest Christians. You remember my good friend Sarah, the atheist, who led us in a conversation about creation? A few years ago, I got the opportunity to go back to that church, and I got the opportunity to stand in front of her and her fiance, and I had the chance to marry them. And what's crazy is her fiance was the youth pastor of the church that followed me when I left. And so here's this young lady who said to me, I don't believe in God. And now she's marrying, heaven forbid, a youth pastor. And I think about the way they're still there. They're continuing to invest in the lives of young people and teenagers, and they're making a difference. And she's part of that. But I wonder, what if we actually never gave her a space to ask questions? What if we never gave her room to express doubts about what she's feeling and thinking about God? What if we told her, sorry, you're not where we are. One day you'll get there. I wonder if she would be guiding people into a relationship with Jesus. But because of her doubts, I think she has a healthy discovery of who God is in her life. So this morning, I just want to invite you to think about with me for just a minute that God is okay with you doubting. And if you feel like you no longer have faith because you've had all these questions, I want you to know that you're still a follower. God still knows you, He sees you, He believes in you, and He wants you to talk about those things. This morning, if you felt like, hey, God's not part of my life, He's nowhere to be found, I don't think He's around, let me just invite you this moment and this time to give your life back to God. Because He's not asking you to be perfect. He's just asking that you work through it. And that is what Jesus really said.